Hi everyone, and welcome to the latest Tune In Tuesday with Cicerone Press. I'm Amy Hodkin, and it's lovely to be back for the latest in our series. This is the 9th out of 10 live events that we're doing in this block. So yeah, if you've watched our events before, welcome back. And if you're new here, it's great to have you with us. And yeah, if you're inspired by what you hear today and you want to watch our previous events, you can find them on our YouTube channel, on Facebook, and also on our website. So yeah, plenty of ways to access our previous events. I'm going to introduce our guest in a minute, but just so you know, my colleague Hannah Stevenson is on Facebook and our various social media channels to collect your questions. So any questions you have for Zoe, please put them either as a comment on the Facebook video. You can put them in the webinar in Zoom in the Q&A feature. You can also tweet them to us at Cicerone Press, and also send them to live@cicerone.co.uk. So however you're watching, send us your questions and we will put them to Zoe either as we're going through or kind of at the end. So yes, whatever you want to know, we'll be able to find it out for you. So yeah, I'm going to introduce Zoe Langley-Wathen, who is an outdoor enthusiast and long-distance walker and writer who shares her experiences through her popular blog and website Head Right Out. She works to encourage women to be more resilient through opportunity and champions the concept of micro-bravery. In 2011, Zoe challenged herself to walk the South West Coast Path, solo camping and raising money for charity. This 47-day event experience formed the basis for her chapter in the recently published The Biggest Book of Yes, 49 short stories, and its charitable project, which launched at the end of last week on the 1st of August 2020. Since her Southwest Coast Path trip, she has completed many other long-distance hikes, including the Camino Frances, the Pennine Way, Offers Dyke, and in 2012, she was the first woman to walk the newly opened Wales Coast Path. So it'd be great if I could welcome Zoe. Hi, Zoe.
I'm here. Hello, Amy.
Hello. Joining us from your very lovely new narrowboat.
Yes. Well, I'm not so sure about it being so new, but it's definitely new to me. Yeah, she's looking a little bit tired at the moment.
Yeah, so if we run into any technical issues, we can just blame it on Wi-Fi connections and
yes.
yeah, being on a canal.
Yeah, hopefully we won't have too many of those.
Yeah, so Zoe, it's lovely to speak to you in the week following the publication of The Biggest Book of Yes, 49 short adventure stories. I said that wrong earlier, but how has the response been so far?
Well, the response actually has been really, really good. As a group, as a team, we've been pushing the Biggest Book of Yes, and obviously, with a charitable book, there's always that concern that it's not going to do so well, and because the team that are pushing it, we're not experienced necessarily in the world of marketing, but it launched on Saturday. And the response has been fabulous. I've actually got some figures here, some rankings. So as of an hour ago, the ebook was number 3 in travel writing, and number 15 in adventure travel books, and number 12 in the travel writing books. And then the print copy, because there's a paperback copy as well, that was number 14 in adventure travel and number 11 in the travel writing. So it's gradually climbing. We keep watching it, and it's tempting to keep pressing refresh every hour, but unfortunately I don't have time to do that. But it's very exciting. As of this morning, we'd made £760.67 in royalties, plus a few dollars as well. And essentially what that equates to is that gets 10 people who suffer with this skin condition called XP. It's Xeroderma Pigmentosum, which means they have an extreme sensitivity to UV light. And that's not just outdoor UV light, that's indoor UV light too. It will burn their skin and make them more susceptible to skin cancer. So they have to wear special clothing and special suits spots to enable them to be outside or under that kind of light. And so this is going to enable 10, at the moment, 10 people to be able to go out on a safe adventure, an adventure where they are covered or not covered, but they are in an environment that is safe for them. So there's film on windows, for example. So, and they do things like rock climbing and archery, yeah, all sorts of wonderful things that perhaps we might take for granted and they wouldn't otherwise get to do.
It sounds like a really lovely, inspiring project to be a part of and to have that impact on people, directly through what you've done. But could you give us a brief overview of the book and kind of how you got involved with it?
Yes, certainly. So John Doolan is our editor and he's a member of the YesTribe. I was, I guess, quite a new member of the YesTribe. I was sort of, pootling in and out of the group and sort of watching what people were doing and commenting on things from time to time. And then one day he popped a request up for people who had a story of where they had said yes to something that they would ordinarily have said no to. And if they would like to share that story in written form. And I thought, actually, yes, I do have a story and I would love to share it. So it was a definite yes from me there. That happened in January, and we had quite a tight turnaround. We had to turn the chapter around in about 6 to 8 weeks. I had a 2-week holiday away in that time, and I was getting ready to move, and I had to think very carefully, have I got time to do this? And it was still yes, I'm going to do it, whatever, I'm not going to pass up this opportunity. And so the book is 49 of us said yes, we would like to be part of this. And John, didn't say no to anybody. It wasn't a selection process. It was just a case of these people are mostly inexperienced authors, but have stepped up and said yes to wanting to do this. And he wanted to give us all the opportunity to be published. So 49 adventure stories of people saying yes to things, and it's a complete multitude, variety of stories. So there's things like somebody has cycled from London to Rome, somebody rode a tuk-tuk across India, there's a walk of the Pacific Crest Trail, somebody rode the Pacific Ocean. There's my walk in there. There's all sorts of things, and there's something for everybody. And I think the key feature of the book is not just that it's about like adventures, obscure adventures or elite adventures that only people who have got a lot of money or a lot of time could go and do. A lot of them are just everyday adventures, and it's that stepping out of your comfort zone to do something. So like setting up a business, even homeschooling, which I know now with the onset of COVID-19 is quite topical, but homeschooling back when this was being written, actually coronavirus wasn't there, or it was kind of around, but it hadn't reached our shores. So homeschooling, is quite a brave move for somebody to embark upon and to take their child or their children out of mainstream school.
And it sounds like you found it quite an inspiring project to be a part of as well, and to read all those different stories and meet all those people.
Yes, well, as far as reading all the stories, I haven't read all of them yet, but I'm working my way through them. And as far as meeting them all, because of coronavirus, we've just been meeting online, and I am so looking forward to one day being able to go and meet them face to face, because I've definitely met some friends for life. Even though we're meeting in an online platform, it's amazing what Zoom has actually done for people from that respect. We could have had quite an isolating experience, but it's been a very community-minded experience, and one that I really value.
And I think that's something that we found doing these events actually, is that we can speak to people all over the world. And we can speak to you in your canal boat, which would never happen usually.
No.
To like get you up here and do an interview in person. So it's really lovely to be able to then share your story, and the different people you've spoken to, share that across the internet. I think is wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is super. So, but about February, March time, John also then put out a request for artists and illustrators, because as he wanted to give people the opportunity to write their story and become a published author, he also wanted to give people the opportunity to have a go at drawing and illustrating somebody's chapter. And I was in the fortunate position of having trained with a fine art degree, and it's like, yes, please, I'll do that as well. and I'd not had my work published like that before, so again, that was a great experience, and also one that I had to think, okay, can I fit this in? This is April. It had to be done, I think, by the 30th of April, and I knew we were moving 28th of March. I thought we were moving 28th of March. Actually, lockdown gave me a lot more time to work on that illustration, because we ended up staying put in an empty house. Yes, that was quite an experience in itself. We were glamping.
So I'd like to talk about your chapter in particular. So it's about your 2011 solo walking and camping trip along the Southwest Coast Path.
Yes.
Cicero guidebook for, if people are interested. So I thought we'd reflect on that trip and, you know, give people a flavour of the sort of things that you cover in that chapter. So
yeah. So there's a definite theme about fear facing in there, and suffering with imposter syndrome. I mean, I guess it's something I still carry with me even today. But yeah, there was a definite, oh, I can't do this, I'm not capable of doing this. And it was a walk I'd wanted to do for 15 years, but had never embarked on it because I didn't think I was capable. I thought it was, you know, down to the people that were elite athletes, you know, or who were stronger than me. I just didn't have that belief in myself or the confidence in myself that I could do it. So yes, there's fear facing. There's certainly an element of planning and research and what I thought I needed to take with me, that actually I soon realised that I didn't need. It's amazing how, you know, if you have a 68-litre rucksack, how much you find you fill it. It's like having a handbag, a big handbag. If you've got a big handbag, you fill it. So I carry a small handbag, and that way I don't carry very much around with me. And yeah, and then there's the experiences and the people I met along the way, and the kindness of strangers. Oh my goodness, the kindness of strangers, not just on the Southwest Coast Path, but on all of the trips and all of the adventures that I've been on, has been just second to none. They, you know, heartwarming, and I carry memories away with me, and a special place in my heart for a lot of those people that have helped me. And also where it's brought me to now, today. So, you know, something like that, it will never, ever leave you in the same position that you were when you embarked on the trip. And that was something that I didn't know when I started on the Southwest Coast Path, because I thought it was just going to be a one-off walk that would mark my 40th birthday. And I'd tick it off and then carry on my merry way, get on with my life. I didn't for 1 minute think that I would be taking the skills and the things I'd learned from that walk into my day-to-day life, and that, you know, now 9 years on, I'd still be talking about it and still sharing and still using the tools and the skills that I learnt all those years back.
I think that's a really lovely overview for hopefully what we're going to cover in the next 45 minutes or so. Hopefully we can touch on all of those different themes as we're going through. But yeah, so you said you'd wanted to walk the Southwest Coast Path for 15 years. And for people who don't know, it's a 630-mile route from Minehead to Poole, across the North Devon, Cornish, South Devon and Dorset coastlines. So Zoe, I can see why you'd be inspired to walk that, because it sounds absolutely beautiful. But yeah, what was it about this walk that why did you want to do it?
I just had every ounce of connection fizzing with me. It was, I had grown up in Somerset, which is, I was not too far, probably within about 45 minutes of the start of the Southwest Coast Path in Minehead. I had ancestors that I discovered were tin miners from Cornwall before they moved up to Northumberland to be coal miners. I holidayed every year in Devon, and I lived in Dorset. In fact, I've just moved up to Wales now, but lived in Dorset for 30 years. And for a good portion of those years, I lived in Purbeck, which is a really beautiful stretch of Dorset and covers the South West Coast Path as well, and the Jurassic Coast. And I was even, as a teacher, I was working at a school in Purbeck where they commissioned an artist to create the South West Coast Path marker when, I don't think it was when it was first instigated the path, because I think it's been around a lot longer, but they just wanted a special marker to mark the end or the start, whichever way you're walking, which is at South Haven Point. We call it Pool, but it's the other side of the water to Pool. So, but yeah, so there were all these reasons that just connected me to it. And it all came about one day. I was in the little city of Wells, walked into their bookstore, and at this point I had been looking for a good year or so for the right challenge that would mark my 40th birthday, and I just hadn't found it. I'd looked at Kilimanjaro, I'd looked at the Great Wall of China, I'd looked at the Inca Trail, and it just, nothing was connecting with me. And then in this moment of divine intervention, is what I call it, I just walked into the bookshop and there was this shaft of light shining down on the bookshelf in front of me. And there was the book, the South West Coast Path Handbook. And it was just a eureka moment. It's like, yes, that's it. That's the one. Oh my gosh, why didn't I think of this before? You're just like, so I picked up the book and skipped off to the counter to pay for it. And I just knew in that moment, okay, this is it, I'm going to do it. And I was scared, but I was also filled with this renewed excitement. And so for the following few months, it's probably about a year actually, just over a year, I researched and I read 500 Mile Walkies by Mark Wallington, which is an amazing book and full of comedy as well. And he walks the South West Coast Path with a dog that he borrows from a friend in London. It's just hilarious. And that also gave me a kind of new insight into this walk and what I potentially could expect. And I told people, and that was the key thing, to maintaining that inspiration and that focus. So I told people, and then I had accountability. I had to carry it through. There was no backing out once I'd announced it. And I announced it, pretty big time in front of about 500 staff and students at the school that I was working at in an assembly. And yeah, so it became this new Wath Walk. I dubbed it the Wath Walk, because my surname then was Wathen. And and we had lots of future Wath Walks after that too.
Yeah, I suppose, did the book that you read, did that prepare you for the Coast Path, as in terms of what to expect?
In a very small way. So, clearly it's not a guidebook. It's really, it's fiction. But I saw, when I was reading it, I was seeing it as an account. But it was, I think a lot of it, you need to read it tongue-in-cheek, because there's a lot of it that's probably he's been very creative with, and because it's very humorous. But no, a very small amount of it did. So, it gave me a sense of what to expect with some of the hills, for example, especially the first hill coming out of Minehead. But yeah, I think it was just keeping my inspiration alive more than anything, as opposed to preparing me in any practical form.
I read The Salt Path by Raina.
Yes.
Over lockdown, and she walks the Southwest Coast Path, and in that she talks about how big the hills are, which I don't think would have occurred to me necessarily beforehand. Interesting.
I absolutely devoured that book. I had an injury last April, a skiing injury, so I was off work for 6 weeks on crutches, and a lovely friend of mine from the running club that I was part of down in Dorset, Judith, she brought this book round for me. She said, "Zoe," she said, "I thought you might want to read this whilst you're on, you know, laid up with your leg," and I was so grateful. And I just, I devoured it in about 2 weeks. Unfortunately, I still have the book. Sorry, Judith, if you're listening. I still have the book, and it's here on the boat because Mike's reading it, and he's loving it, but he's a lot slower at reading it than I am. But it absolutely described things in a way that I could understand, that had I not walked the path, I wouldn't have understood. You know, that the feeling that you get when people look at you when you're carrying a big rucksack, the feelings that you have in your feet when you've been pounding the path for days on end. It's like a throbbing that just doesn't go away. You know, that's something that you can't actually really understand until you're there lying awake at 2 o'clock in the morning with this pain in your feet that you just, you know, I have cried. I've had tears streaming down my face sometimes where it's been so painful. And yet you still have this thing that makes you want to keep going and you want to keep doing it.
Well, let's talk about the realities of doing the South West Coast Path as a solo camping trip, because you talk, you know, a lot about overcoming fear on your blog, and you've kind of mentioned that already. And yeah, this was your first long distance solo camping trip. So what was your biggest fear going into it?
I think I actually had two, and they were of equal measure. The first one was wild camping solo. I wasn't so worried about camping solo because for the most part, when I first started doing it, I was doing it in campsites, and I didn't feel alone because there were people around me I could talk to. But yes, certainly wild camping solo was a biggie for me, and it actually took me 31 days into the walk before I finally became brave enough to actually do it. And my other nemesis, big nemesis, was river crossings. And there are a lot of river crossings on the South West Coast Path, but they're all served by stepping stones, like ferries, or sometimes the ferries consist of a man in a little rowing boat that will take you across, causeways. But there's one river, the River in South Devon, and that you have to wade. And because it's an estuary, I just had built it up to be this monster, and I had visions of me being pulled out to sea by an ebbing tide and drowning, and I'd looked at images of it, you know, taken from the air, and it just looked so foreboding. And yeah, so those were my two big fears.
Was that crossing as bad as you expected?
Yes and no. It's it was interesting. I actually arrived at the crossing at night. Actually, no, I tell a lie. I arrived at the crossing in the afternoon, but you can't cross the until you are 2 hours either side of low tide. Low tide happens twice a day. And because I'd reached it in the afternoon, I think I'd worked out that I wouldn't be able to start crossing it until about 9:30 at night. It was summer, so it was still daylight at that point, but only just. And yeah, so crossed at 9:30 at night, and then I found myself digging poles in. I was with people. I was actually quite grateful I was with people, I have to say, although I felt quite ashamed that a girl that I'd met en route, who I knew was a couple of days ahead of me, I knew she had probably done it on her own. But no, I was reassured to have somebody there with me. And I was digging my poles in really deep into the riverbed because I could feel this tide pulling, and it was really fast. I had some sandals, which I'd put on, so I tied my boots to my rucksack so they didn't get wet. But it was just getting deeper and deeper. And as I felt the riverbed or the estuary bed shelve away, and I was going lower and lower, and it was getting faster and faster. Anyway, got to the other side, and I could feel myself trembling all the way across, but you just have to focus, you just have to get on with it. By the time I got to the other side, it was dark. I had head torch on, but I had a big smile on my face. It was like, oh my gosh, I've done it. I've had, you know, that feeling where you've absolutely met the thing that scared you most. Yeah, that was a really big thing for me. Yeah. And I skipped up the hill singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow, I think, at 10 past 10 at night, because it took 40 minutes to cross. But yeah, it was, and I should say, in the guidebooks, it generally says you should expect to get wet up to your knees. Well, my Nick has got wet, so I'm either very, very short, and I'm only 5'2.5", no, 5'3", but yeah, I did get wet, but I shouldn't have done.
Yeah, you spoke there about having other people with you. And I wanted to talk to you about kind of having a community, or did you find a community on doing the Southwest Coast Path? Because I think there's a fine line doing a solo experience between, you know, being independent and being lonely. And I wondered what your experience was of that.
Yeah, do you know, I get asked this such a lot, Amy, and it's a really good question, because you would think solo female walking on her own, obviously aside from the fact that you know, there's all the fears that people have about being on your own from a safety point of view, the other questions are about you know, how do you keep yourself occupied? You know, aren't you lonely? I had one woman say to me, well, what do you do in your tent, you know, all night? Don't you get bored? It's like, I'm shattered, I sleep. I write. So I focus in the evening on writing a journal. And for every walk I've done, I've done that. I've kept a journal most nights. And I find that's a really good way of reflecting on what I've been going through that day and sorting out what I need to do the following day. But no, there has never, ever been a feeling of loneliness. I think even in the areas where it is completely isolated, I love to be surrounded by nature and by the countryside. I'm an artist, so I've got that creative mind. So I see art and beauty in pretty much anything and everything. So from the ruined tin mines, I'm thinking of, the name's gone. Anyway, in Cornwall, the ruined tin mines. So the architecture of those and the beauty of the dereliction of those, to the nature, the birds, the butterflies, the sunsets, the sunrises. You know, there's absolutely something there each time. And even on the days where it's pouring with rain and you're just feeling really miserable, thinking, oh, why am I doing this? Really, I shouldn't have been here. There's something that happens. It's a shift that happens in your head, or for me anyway, where I find I lose myself in my own thoughts, and I start problem solving, and I start thinking about the future and planning. On the Southwest Coast Path in particular, because that was the first long distance walk I did, I actually started planning lessons because I was teaching at that point. So I was planning whole schemes of work for months. You know, I was like, I could do this and I could do this, and that would be great. And then at the end of the day, or if I sat down for lunch, I'd just make a few notes so I wouldn't forget things. So yeah, actually I find being in my own company is a really useful experience, but it's not all an alone or a solo escapade. You think you're going on an adventure like that on your own, but boy, I mean, especially as a woman on your own walking, you attract attention, and people want to talk to you because they want to know what you're doing. They want to hear your story. I was sponsored so many times because I was doing that walk for charity. I had so many people giving me money whilst I was actually on the path, which really lifted me. And yeah, I just really enjoyed talking to them about what I was doing and why I was doing it. And there's a difference also between the people that you meet that want to talk to you about that really don't understand potentially why you would want to do that. It's like, really? You're crazy. Why would you want to do that? 630 miles? I could never do that. To the people that you meet who are also walking, particularly the other coastal walkers, and that tribe, which is what I think, I'm now bringing that back to your original question of the community, they became my tribe. I might not see them for a week or 2 weeks. I might walk with somebody for a day and then not ever see them again. But they definitely lift your spirits and become your community and your support network whilst you're out on that walk. And every walk I've been on, I have met people like that, but particularly the South West Coast Path, I don't think I could replicate meeting a group of people that were, quite as close-knit as they were.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think people talk about that a lot in terms of like the Camino and pilgrimage routes, of who you come into contact with on a semi-regular basis and then kind of do the walk with them. But yeah, it does happen on all long distance walks, doesn't it? I've done the coast to coast and things like that, and yeah, you do meet the same people, kind of catch up with them and how they're doing and the bits that they found really tricky.
And it is quite strange, when you think you've said goodbye to them, forever. You think you're never going to see them again because they've got this grand plan that they're going to walk it, say, in 30 days, and you're going to take 40 days to do it. And then all of a sudden they've had a day off, and you just, your paths cross again, and it's just beautiful serendipity when that happens. I love it. It's just meant to be.
So that community, I guess, keeps you going, but how else do you keep yourself motivated on a solo long distance trip, when the weather is awful or the hill's really big? How do you keep yourself?
I sing a lot. I wouldn't be allowed to do that now, would I? We're not allowed to sing because of COVID-19. I do sing a lot, and I make up songs as well, or I make up poetry. I found myself on one walk I did, I think it was off His Dyke, and I was singing to the sheep. Now that's really worrying potentially, isn't it? But I'd come up with this great song, what I thought was this great song about sheep, to some tune that everybody knew, and it's probably in one of my logbooks somewhere what it was. And so every time I met a herd of sheep, I would sing this song to them. And I think having that that routine and that rhythm does keep you going. I mean, it's what the army use, or used to use, to keep their soldiers moving through marching, especially when, the drudgery of marching, when kind of feelings are getting down and souls are feeling destroyed. It lifts you. But yes, again, as I said before, I do a lot of thinking and a lot of planning, and that definitely, that thinking about the future and what would I do in that situation, and problem solving. And I just get myself lost in my own thoughts. I'm good at daydreaming, essentially.
Yeah. Was that something that you did, that you were good at anyway, before you did your first long distance trip, or did that come about as a bit of a surprise?
No, I've always been good at daydreaming. My mum would definitely say that. In fact, she tells people stories of, when I was just a wee 7 or 8 year old, and I used to daydream putting my socks on in the morning, so come on, Zoe, we've got to get you to school. So yes, I think I have always been good at doing that. But I think in this respect, it was a completely new thing for me, because I was used to mostly walking with other people and not walking on my own. And I wasn't quite sure how I was going to handle that, to be honest, the whole walking on my own thing. So yeah, it was nice to discover that I do actually enjoy my own company as much as I enjoy being with other people too.
Well, yeah, let's talk about that then, because you have, walked several other solo routes, but you have also walked long distance routes with other people. So the Wales Coast Path in 2012 and the Camino Frances in 2016. So yeah, what do you value in each experience?
Well, I think it's got to be the people. I mean, I value so much, and I think I've touched on it previously about the sights and the sounds. I do really appreciate being in the outdoors and in nature. But there's definitely something about meeting the people as well, and that social side of things. It is my outdoor medicine, and I talk about that on my website quite a lot. So, you know, whenever I'm feeling a bit fuzzy-headed or a bit like I'm not able to cope with an issue that's happening at home or in my work life or something I need to figure out, I'll go off for a walk. And that I've learned definitely from doing these long distance paths, that I need to be outside in order to kind of manage my day-to-day stuff. But it's interesting. I think I've discovered that no two walks are ever the same. I could walk the Southwest Coast Path again and again and again, and it wouldn't be the same walk each time. And I know people that have done that. In fact, one of the guys that I met on the Southwest Coast Path that first time, he's currently on the path now, and he's walking it for the 22nd or 23rd time. So he's quite a legend as far as that goes.
Wow.
Yes. And he's 73 now, I should add. So he's no spring chicken either. There's another friend of mine that I met on the Camino Frances, and she's walked it, I think, 8 or 9 times. And she has said, no Camino, even if it's the same route, no Camino is ever the same. And you know, the weather accounts for part of your experience. The people account for the experience, and even your state of mind, your mood will account for the experience. So it's always a different ball game each time. And I have to say, the Pennine Way, I did the Pennine Way in 2017, and that was a 20-day walk, 16 days out of those 20 days, and it rained. It really rained. And so, yeah, that was quite an experience. And I've always said, I don't think I'll ever go back and do that. But actually, I might, because I think it's important to re-experience it and make friends with it again.
Well, the views would be amazing.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. And it's actually, I say make friends with it, that's unfair, because I didn't fall out with it at all, but it's just, it was hard because it was so incredibly boggy as a result of that. And somebody from my running club had walked it just the 2 weeks before. He got to Kirk Yetholm within days of us starting at Edale. And he'd had an amazing 2 weeks, beautiful weather. So yeah, I was just unlucky, but yes, one day I'll go back and do it again.
Yeah, I feel like the Southwest Coast Path was probably the biggest learning curve, given that it was your first long distance trip. And maybe you could talk about what the biggest thing you learned from that was, but you know, do you learn something from each of them? I
do. And that's probably the first thing that I've learnt, if I'm honest, out of all of it, that you're never an expert, and you always come away with new experiences and new lessons learned. But then, yeah, each walk is different, and I've learnt that I probably shouldn't overplan, but each time I still do. My kit lists are kind of planned to the nth degree, because I want to know exactly how much weight I'm carrying now. From that first walk I did where I was carrying 18 kilos and I really suffered as a result, and I was sending things home quite regularly. I went down to a 46-litre rucksack on the second walk on the Wales Coast Path, and each walk now I'm constantly trying to make sure that I'm carrying sort of about 9 or 10 kilos, no more than, with base weight. And it's quite the competition between my husband and I to see who can carry the lightest rucksack. But you know, from a psychology point of view, what I've learned is my ability for endurance and strength to keep going when things get tough. and I hadn't expected that. So, you know, when you've got the biggest blisters on your feet, and, you know, you've come down so many hills that have absolutely broken your knees, and you just feel like you can't carry on, and then it rains, and then it's been raining so hard for 3 days that the mud on the path is so thick you can't stay upright. You know, there's all these things, and yet you just still keep going. You still see the beauty or the positivity in that walk. You still see that there's something in it for you, and there's a reason why you're doing it. So yes, I think it's stickability and endurance.
Yeah, I think that
Yes.
sense of resilience while you're on the trail is really important, and learning that about yourself. And you also talk about, you've mentioned it already, but this concept of outdoor medicine, and yeah, the benefit of that on mental health. And yeah, I guess, you know, you can't be out on these trails all the time. And actually the Southwest Coast Path was, you know, 9 years ago now, but it seems to still resonate with you. So how do you carry, you know, these lessons that you learn, how do you carry them through into your day-to-day life?
Well, this was actually something that I learned about myself quite recently. I would say within the last 6 months, actually, that although I'd become known as the woman who walks, you know, because every year I was creating this new challenge for myself where I'd go off on a long distance walk, and people expected it of me. And yes, I enjoy it. I get such a lot out of it. But there came a point in 2018 where both my parents were becoming more frail, and I realised that it wasn't, you know, possible for me to go off on another long distance trail again for a while, because they needed me to be around. And you know, the fear of that, whilst, you know, on one side I definitely took on board my responsibility there, and I wanted and needed to be there, but the other side of it was the fear of, oh, I'm not going to get to do a walk, but I need that walk. I need that focus and that challenge. And therein were the words that suddenly made me sit up and realize, oh, so it's not just about the walk. It's actually about the focus, have the need to have a focus. In fact, I think I wrote a blog about it a few months ago, the need to have a challenge and something to aim for. So I set about creating a new challenge that would mean that I could still get outside as regularly as possible, but not just for, oh, I'm just going to go for a walk. It was a walk with a purpose. I was ticking off a challenge. I was meeting some criteria. And do you know, it was the medicine I needed. It was absolutely perfect. And actually it turned out to be a really hard year because we lost Dad at the end of that year. And yeah, there were all sorts of hurdles that I had to cross during that time. But all the while, I was doing my 100 Mappy Days challenge, where I was following a map or a map app. And each time, these walks were different. They were different walks using a different route. Sometimes they would overlap, you know, certain routes would cross over, but that was fine. They were generally different. And yeah, it was fabulous. And I didn't manage to do it in the whole of the first year, which is what I planned to do. So I ended up spilling over into the second year. So 100 Mappy Days actually lasted me, it was about 18 months, I think. No, it was 2 years. It was full on 2 years. And I got such a lot out of it. And I would definitely recommend, you know, somebody trying that, because it was manageable in the time frame that I had available. So if I only had time to go off and do a 1 or 2 mile walk, that was all I did. But I took photos and I sort of, you know, talked about it to people. And then if I had the chance to do a 10 mile walk, then I'd go off and do a 10 mile walk.
Because I suppose all of us would love to be able to go and walk something like the Southwest Coast Path for 47 days. But, you know, not all of us have the time to do that. And I guess it's fitting in all these little adventures into the lives that we already lead.
Yes, and also, I mean, there's a lot of people out there that are section walking. big trails like the Southwest Coast Path, like the Wales Coast Path, and many other, you know, one of my old colleagues from school, I know she was walking the Ridgeway in sections as well. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You know, walking it in sections or walking it in one go, there's no difference. The only difference is that you are taking a greater chunk of time out of your life. But yeah, I think the mindset, I guess the difference is the mindset changes and the endurance level. But, you know, from my point of view, I don't see myself as any better than somebody who is doing it in sections, because that's all they've got time to do. You know, when they're on holiday, you know, 2 or 3 times a year, they'll go and do it. I think it's great. Anything that will get people out and walking and enjoying those paths.
I had a question for you, and actually one of our viewers has also asked a similar thing, because I wanted to ask you what your next adventure or project is. But someone's asked, if the Southwest Coast Path was for your 40th, what's for your 50th?
I've been really, yeah, good question. Oh, I have been struggling to find something that will suit my 50th, because, you know, I am still doing those care days for mum. So I can't necessarily go away for weeks on end. But I'm still trying to hatch a plan for my 50th. And I keep hearing or reading on social media, there's one in the book, in Biggest Book of Yes, about a challenge, an A to Z challenge. I can't remember if it was for a 40th or a 50th birthday, but I thought that was absolutely brilliant, doing different activities. It was everything from archery to Quidditch to zorbing, I think, which I thought was fabulous. You know, it might be something that I open up to my social media followers and say, come on, you know, you help me with this, and, you know, go for a free for all. I don't know. We'll see on that one. In the immediate future, you know, obviously my new challenge has been moving on to the boat, because we've only been on here for 3 weeks. So I didn't have any plans for a challenge at that point. I had just finished doing my virtual Southern Upland Way challenge back at home in Dorset, because I was supposed to be walking the Southern Upland Way with 2 friends back in April, and that was obviously shelved because of coronavirus. So I decided to go ahead and do that instead, going up and down my back garden steps. So yeah, there might be something else along those lines. I don't know. I have been looking at my Head Right Out 100. So the 100 Mappy Days, I did 100 Scary Days last year, and I've been looking at perhaps doing another 100-day challenge. So something that's, you know, condensed over 100 days, and actually doing something for 100 days creates good habits as well. It kind of really gets into your psyche and keeps you thinking in a particular way. It's, you know, they say it takes 2 weeks to form a habit, but actually you can slip out of it again quite easily. I did think, I don't know what the listeners think about this, I did think, having moved to Wales, that I might do 100 rainy days and come out with some kind of challenge that involves me showing that you can have an adventure in the rain and enjoy it. You will enjoy it.
Or you can come up to Cumbria as well if you want.
Yeah. I was on the coast to coast in September, just gone, and yeah, we did 2 weeks doing the coast to coast, and the first 5 days going through Cumbria, and it rained, and it really rained. But again, those memories actually have stuck with me. You know, the footpath that I wanted over a particular fell had actually disappeared, and was a waterfall. And it wasn't until I checked the map, it's like, well, this is the path, but it just happens to be a waterfall.
Oh gosh, yeah. I suppose as well, you've talked about doing things for 100 days and how that, you know, builds good habits and builds resilience. How has all of this helped during lockdown for you?
Well, I think actually that leads nicely, or leads back into the virtual Southern Upland Way challenge, which I knew I was going to mention at some point, and I've just mentioned it earlier. So yeah, I really didn't want to feel broken because I wasn't able to go off on my challenge walk. And actually, I felt it was important to share that with other people as well, because I knew that there were a lot of other people potentially in the same position as me. So I put it out on social media and said, you know, does anybody else want to join me? And I had a hearty little band of mostly women, actually. I had a couple of men start to do it and then they dropped out. But yeah, we had a group of us that were posting every evening on the amount of steps we'd done. I gave them the figures. I gave them an image of how many steps they needed to do in order to achieve the distance that day. So the idea was that we would cover 8,450 meters of ascent across 2 weeks. And that's the ascent of the Southern Upland Way. And in fact, I wrote down the figures here. So for me, that was 4,225 flights up my back garden steps, which was an ascent of 2 meters, basically. But when you add it up, going up and down, the amount of actual physical steps that I was doing was 92,950 steps over 2 weeks. And so although I didn't feel broken from having lost the path, you know, the challenge of doing that trail, I have to say my ankles and my knees, they were pretty sore by the end of that. But it was a good sore, and we had so much fun. And the last day we did it in fancy dress. And yeah, I just loved sharing that with everybody. And that, I suppose, building that back into the resilience thing, I think knowing that each time you get a knockback and each time things get hard, knowing that each time you achieve something as a result of those knockbacks or those tough things that you're going through, it adds another layer, another thread to your tapestry. If you see your life as a tapestry and each experience is another thread, another skein of embroidery silk, and it just makes it that much stronger. In fact, I was at the Adventure Mind conference back in February, which was set up by Explorers Connect, and I heard a guy speak there that really stuck with me. This particular thing he said: I've always talked about resilience as being like a tapestry where it starts off flimsy and then gets stronger the more you add to it. He talked about it as a rope. And so, you know, it's just a piece of string to begin with, your resilience. But each experience you have, you add another thread to the rope. And when you twist rope, it becomes even stronger. And I just thought that was a good analogy too. So yes, throughout lockdown, each experience has been adding to my resilience. And that's not to say that I'm never you know, flimsy. Sometimes I get a bit worn and frayed around the edges, and that's fine. That's normal. You know, we should expect that because we're human, and that's part of our human makeup. Nothing's ever perfect. Nothing is always positive. You know, we all have good days and we all have down days, and it's important to respect that and give yourself the time to weave back together those down days back into your tapestry or your rope.
I think both of those are really brilliant analogies, actually. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That was just really lovely to hear. I guess if people are feeling, you know, coming out of lockdown, they're not feeling as confident as perhaps they were before, or, you know, they're just looking to take up the next challenge, they're kind of raring to go. What would be your advice to people for kind of stepping out of their comfort zone and, you know, taking on that next challenge, whatever it might be?
I think it's very hard. It's always very hard when people ask me this for me to just choose one thing. But I'll try and condense it, I would say take baby steps. So if people are feeling that they're lacking in confidence, I definitely subscribe to this idea of micro bravery. And I just think if you do things in small baby steps, it's like if you're going to run a marathon, for example, you wouldn't go, oh my gosh, I've got this amazing idea, I'm going to go and run a marathon, and then just go and run it. You would train for it. You would build your body up to understand what to expect and what to experience, and just build up that strength. And that's exactly what you're doing with your mind with micro bravery. You are incorporating tiny little moments of shocking yourself or putting yourself out your comfort zone, just challenging yourself a little bit. I think it's Sarah Williams' Tough Girl Challenges. She always says, if it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you. And I love that mantra. And it's true. So I would say take baby steps, perhaps create a chart, figure out what it is you need to do to get to the end goal, and write all those baby steps down onto that chart. And this is my teacher head coming in now, because I've done it for myself, and I remember my students used to love doing this as well. You know, all of their coursework broken down into little baby steps, into chunks, bite-sized chunks. And even 15 or 16-year-olds loved putting a sticker on that chart every time they'd achieve something. It's amazing, you know, how much enthusiasm we got for a sticker. So yeah, I would do that, figure out what you need to do. So just tick or sticker off every time you've done something. But, you know, if it's wild camping you want to go and do, perhaps you want to go and do it on your own. So perhaps your baby step is to try it in the back garden. Perhaps your next step is to go and do it with a couple of friends before you eventually go and do it on your own somewhere. Yeah, there's all sorts of ways of tackling it, but I would say just see it as a couch to 5K for courage. Micro bravery is a couch to 5K to help you build up that resilience and that strength. And it's not age dependent. I have to say that this isn't just for, you know, people from sort of, you know, the 20s through to me, I'm 49 now. This is for any age group. And I do get a lot of women that contact me who are in the older age group category, the empty nesters like me, you know, children that have grown up and moved away, you know, they've gone off to university or just moved away, full stop. But also the women who are perhaps, you know, retired, and they no longer know what to really do with themselves. They've lost that role that they had at work, and they're looking for a new focus and a new challenge, and perhaps to find a new identity. So this is all a good step, good way forward to pace themselves into a new, braver self, hopefully.
I think that's absolutely wonderful advice, Zoe. I'm afraid that's all we have time for this evening, but thank you so much for talking to us about the South West Coast Path, about micro bravery, getting outside your comfort zone, and of course the biggest book of Yes. So where can people find that if they want to get hold of a copy? Where's the best place?
So there's all sorts of places we can find that, but on Amazon, you can buy it on Amazon. If you type in the biggest book of Yes, you will find it on there. But if you come to Head Right Out, I'm Head Right Out on all platforms, and I've been shouting about it from the rooftops for weeks now. So you will find it there as well. Also the YesTribe, I should give them a little shout out as well. You will find it mentioned on the YesTribe. Yeah, so the biggest book of Yes, you can type in to Amazon TBBOY, the biggest book of Yes, or just type it as it is there, and you'll find it. But it's good value. It's a big book. If I can just show you, it's a really big book, and you will get a lot of value from that. There's something for everybody.
And a final question from the audience. Do you take a book on the hike? I'm assuming not a book that size.
Definitely not a book that size. The first hike I did, I took a Kindle with me. It was an early Kindle, first generation, and then I cracked the screen part way. So I shelved that idea. But no, actually I don't. And the reason for that is because I'm so focused on writing my journal that, I mean, very often I'm writing my journal and I'm actually falling asleep mid-sentence or mid-paragraph. And in some journal entries, you can see where my words have just trailed off, where I've nodded off. So yes, I tend to be so physically tired that I'm unable to read. I love reading and I will absolutely devour books, but yes, on challenges like that, I'm too tired too.
Oh, brilliant. Zoe, thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, best of luck with the future of the book, and I hope it raises lots of money for your charity, and yeah, you get to send lots of people on safe adventures.
Thank you so much, Amy. And if I could just quickly add one last 20-second thing. Head Write Out Hub, I have a new group linked to Head Write Out. The Head Write Out Hub is on Facebook, and it's all about giving women a safe space to come and talk about those things, those fears and those plans and those dreams that they would love to do, but not quite sure how to embark on. So if they come and find me there as well, that would be great. But thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you, Zoe. Yes, so next week, if people want to join us again, thank you for joining us this week. I'll just pop this up. Yeah, thank you for joining us for our latest Tune In Tuesday with Cicerone Press. This is our penultimate session, so we have one final week next week in this block of live events. So yeah, thank you for joining us if you've been here since the beginning or if you just joined us. It's been really great to have you with us. Next week, we're talking about trekking in Tajikistan and the Pamir Trail with Jan Bakker. So yeah, so that should be a really fascinating event, and you can find out about that. Visit cicerone.co.uk/events. You can also sign up for our newsletter for plenty more information about all things Cicerone, and join our Facebook group, Cicerone Connect, which is a lovely community where people are sharing the trips that they've been on, or things that they're hoping to do, and asking questions. So yeah, plenty of ways to get involved with Cicerone, and also go and look at Zoe's various websites that she's mentioned. And yeah, hopefully see you next week.